Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This is News Talk.
All right, you're welcome along. It's Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 10 o'clock this evening. We got a cracking show lined up. Sonny Bill Williams, one of the few men to have won 2 Rugby World Cups with the All Blacks in 2011 and 2015. A real superstar of, well, Rugby Union, Rugby League, and hoping to become that in boxing as well. And he's gone the right way about it. He's been in Dublin for the last few weeks training with Andy Lee, and Sonny Bill Williams is going to join us on the show to talk about all of that after 8 o'clock. And John Giles, 7:30, as always. A lot going on in football this week with the Champions League. He'll give us his thoughts on that. Europa League tonight, where, just to bring you up to date, Rangers away to Borussia Dortmund. Rangers leading by 4-1 in the Europa League. Celtic in action in the Conference League in a little while. And we are on the eve of the League of Ireland season, and we're going to have loads of build-up to that with Stewie Byrne and Dan McDonnell in studio after 9 o'clock. We'll hear from Damien Duff, from Stephen Bradley, from lots of others besides. So give us your thoughts on that to 53106 or at Off the Ball on Twitter. Richie McCormack, good evening.
Nathan, how are you?
I'm all right. Joe Molloy, how are you?
Great, lads, how are you?
So the latest episode of Golf Weekly is up right now, and it is well worth a listen because it has been a crazy old day, to put it mildly, in the world of golf. Richie, I'm sure you're aware, golf is in a funny spot at the moment around its future and the future of the PGA Tour and the European Tour, because Saudi Arabia and a huge amount of Saudi Arabian money is lurking for golfers. They are looking to set up their own rival to the PGA Tour, and this has been spoken about constantly over the last couple of years, with everybody a little bit wary as to how much truth there was in it, whether the players would actually ever leave the PGA Tour in reality despite what they were being offered. Would they be allowed to play majors, any of that? But it does now all feel like it's going to come to a head over the next few weeks, despite the fact that Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, most of the best young players in the world have said, no, we're staying with the PGA Tour no matter what is offered. But certain players such as Bryson DeChambeau, Phil Mickelson, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood have all expressed an interest. Mostly players who are sort of mid to late 40s who are being offered, frankly, obscene amounts of money to up and leave. So 28, 30, 40, 50 million up front to go and join this new tour that we don't know a huge amount about, Joe. It's gone in with the Asian tour to give it some legitimacy. Recently announced they were going to play some events in Europe, play an event in England, not for massive money. Though again, as the news continues to flow out, there's talk that they're going to play a lot of events in the USA as well, where the real money will be made. So Phil Mickelson has sort of been front and centre around all of this and using it as a real leverage to get the PGA Tour to give more to the players. Remember, we're talking about the most pampered sports people in the world right here. We're not talking about guys who are on the breadline. Like, they're playing for 10, 12 million on an average week on the PGA Tour. The Players' Championship, 20 million. The PIP, which is money for nothing for the best players, is 40 million a year spread between essentially the 10 most famous players on tour. It is nothing but cash, cash, cash and more cash. And still they want more. So Phil Mickelson has been in and around all of this and has definitely let his name be very much associated with it without fully committing. And he did an interview today. We were just in the middle of recording Golf Weekly when this interview with Alan Shipnuck, who's a very respected American golf journalist, had just sent out a tweet saying that the Saudis were waiting to get 20 golfers on board before making an announcement. They have 20 and they're going to make an announcement next month at the Players' Championship, which is the standout event for the PGA Tour season. But also released an article from a book he's doing, an unauthorised biography of Phil Mickelson. Phil, the rip-roaring and unauthorised biography of golf's most colourful superstar. And just put out a little excerpt, and I'm going to read you a bit of this, Richie.
Okay.
So Mickelson told Alan Shipnuck that he had enlisted 3 other top players about moving to this new tour. He didn't pretend to be excited about hitching his fortunes to Saudi Arabia, admitting the SGL was nothing more than what he called sports washing by a brutally repressive regime. And this is in quotes from Phil Mickelson. They're scary mother to get involved with. We know they killed Khashoggi and have a horrible record in human rights. They execute people over there for being gay. Knowing all this, why would I consider it? Because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape how the PGA Tour operates. They've been able to get by with manipulative, coercive, strong-arm tactics because we, the players, had no recourse. Wow.
Jeez.
Wow.
That took a turn.
How does Phil Mickelson come back from that?
I don't think he's concerned about how he comes back from it. He's clearly pretty entrenched in his views, which if to conflate the so-called strong arm tactics of Jay Morahan and the PGA Tour and the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi and the oppression of minorities in Saudi Arabia is that's quite something. That is quite something, and that pretty much tells you all you need to know about Phil Mickelson if you're.
I'm rarely shocked, Joe, but when I read these quotes from Phil Mickelson, I was gasping, going, how could he allow this to be published? Now, Alan Shipnuck has a long relationship with Phil Mickelson, and he did say that at no stage did Mickelson say this was off the record. But at the same time, I'm not quite sure Phil Mickelson thought it was going to appear in the way that it has. But it does seem as though this is exactly what Phil Mickelson said. And, we spoke about this a lot a couple of weeks ago when golf was in Saudi Arabia, and there was that line of, we're not politicians, and almost a sense from the golfers trying to portray themselves as oblivious to what was happening in Saudi Arabia. Yet here we have Phil Mickelson clearly stating, I know exactly. I am more than aware of everything that goes on, but I'm willing to use that. I'm willing to use that to just get a bit more cash for me from the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I suspect Alan Shipnuck's getting a phone call from Phil Mickelson today is the honest truth. So Shipnuck has written the unauthorised biography, as you said. Unauthorised biographies are always the best kind. And he was saying this phone call happened before Christmas. He knows that, Mickelson knows that Shipnuck's writing this book, that Shipnuck says in this piece he's conducted 200 interviews, and that, this flirtation with the Saudis is one of the more controversial aspects of Phil Mickelson's career, and Mickelson knows that. So the way Shipnuck paints it in the piece today is, Mickelson couldn't help but give me his side of it. Now, the way he speaks there, i.e. calling the Saudis scary mother duckers, the way he says, we know they killed Khashoggi, so casually, the way he says that, we know they killed Khashoggi, we know they're horrible in human rights, we know they execute people over there for being gay. This is not in keeping with the language Phil Mickelson or other players use when they talk about this publicly. So I don't know what's happened here. I suspect Phil Mickelson will be horrified that these comments are public. Now, I don't doubt that Alan Shipnuck is telling the truth when he says Mickelson at no point said to him, this is an off-the-record conversation. But they have been very close for a long time. This strikes me as a relationship where for a long time Mickelson said things that were not reported necessarily, and he could speak candidly, and therefore, he might have thought, I'm off the record. I don't need to say this. We're just talking here, or I'm just giving you background for the book. Now, Shipnuck will say, look, you never said off the record. I'm entitled to report it. And, he does in this piece today include the link to get pre-orders in for his book. So I think that relationship could suddenly be very, very frosty. Indeed. I don't know what's happened there. They used to be very close. I don't think they're close after today, that's for sure. But the comments are incredibly damaging for Mickelson. And they make a mockery of all the golfers who say things like growing the game and any other Rolodex of terrible excuses for getting involved with the Saudis. To call them scary mother duckers, to basically say they're awful people, but to say I can leverage them against the PGA Tour. And as you rightly point out, nobody sees the PGA Tour players as indentured slaves here. They're doing rather well. Nobody's going to be on Mickelson's side. And, Alan Shipnuck speculates later in this piece. He asks, are Mickelson's grievances with the PGA Tour fueled by money or principle? Now, he says with Mickelson, you can never be sure. But he then follows that up by saying, Mickelson sold his private jet in 2019, and includes a quote from someone saying, he loved that plane so much it was like a fourth child to him. I was shocked he sold it. The only reason I could possibly imagine him doing that was he's feeling serious financial pressure, end quote. So this is all swirling around Phil. I look forward to his next interview. I'm not sure when he's playing next, Nathan, but like I said, I do think he will be sending the letters WTF to Alan Shipnuck today by text.
Well, you say the PGA Tour players aren't exactly indentured slaves. Phil Mickelson says the Tour likes to pretend it's a democracy, but really it's a dictatorship.
Yes, well, what better way to stick it to a dictatorship like the PGA Tour than to go hang out with the Saudis, huh?
He did admit what we all sort of suspected. Like, the PGA Tour players have benefited massively already from the Saudi interest because, as Mickelson said, the Saudi money has finally given us that leverage, and the players have seen huge increases in prize money announced a couple of months back. So the minimum prize fund goes from 10 to 12 million. There's an extra 5 million on the Players' Championship. The FedEx, which was already obscene amount of money, has increased, and it's going to keep increasing between now and 2025 at the very least. We mentioned that PIP, which is basically the top 10 players get 40 million a year to spread between themselves, depending on how much exposure they get and how much popularity they can show they have. So it is money for old rope that they're getting, and a lot of the players, I think, have used it as leverage. Phil Mickelson seems to be the only one who's admitted it publicly, and something that's been touched upon a lot with Mickelson, Joe, over the last while is, like, he is exceptionally keen to always be seen as the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, and he's definitely gone big on NFTs, and he wants the PGA Tour to hand over all the digital assets he says they're sitting on. He says it's worth 20 billion, and how dare they make me pay to use my shots. You know, he thinks of his shot from the Pine Straw at Augusta as his intellectual property, and how dare I have to pay like $1 million to get to use that in certain arenas or through certain platforms. You know, so he's big on that, and I'd say there's people in his ear talking about, hey Phil, these NFTs, you know, in the clubhouse after a round, these NFTs, a lot of money to be made, and Phil's eyes are lighting up here. Like, my favorite quote of the whole thing is where he says to Shipnook, I'm not even sure I want the Saudi Golf League to succeed. You know, he's just like, I mean, the sweet spot of this would be if the Saudis now say, Phil, you can't call us scary mother effers and say you don't even want us to succeed and think we're still going to hand you like $100 million. Jog on, it's over. But this, as a final one for me on all this, this, as you said, does seem to be happening. Basically, they have 20 players signed up. That's what they need. And they're going to have maybe 14 events across the year. They're going to announce it, as you said, with the players, the flagship event at the PGA Tour. 10 of the events, according to a couple of journalists now who are on the story, will be in the US. So, and it's an Asian tour. You know, you can qualify for all the majors via the Asian tour. They've been clever by going in through like a reputable pre-existing tour. So suddenly, you know, the difficult thing for the PGA Tour now is across 10 to 14 weeks of the year, if they're clever about when they stage their events, you could have this Saudi Golf League with Bryson DeChambeau against Phil Mickelson in a playoff on primetime TV in Florida, 20 miles down the road from a PGA Tour event that doesn't have a lot of the big names for whatever reason. And, you know, they can, bloody hell, they can give it away to terrestrial TV free all over the world. They're not in this to make money. So judging by McIlroy and others' comments this week at Riviera, where they came out really strongly against this, they struck me as a group who realised this is real and the talk is over and this thing's about to go. And I'm surprised. I never thought this thing would really get off the ground, but I think we're headed for liftoff now, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think we're going to know an awful lot more over the next couple of weeks. It really does feel like it's coming to a head, and we'll get some proper names and some proper plans in place. If you want to hear a lot more on that, with Shane Ryan, who's a brilliant American golf journalist, on alongside Peter Lowry. We got a good 90 minutes up on otbsports.com/golf weekly. You can subscribe to all that. You get it every Thursday. Lots of good interviews coming up as well over the next little while. Let's get into the news round then. Richie, 53106 is the text number if you've got any thoughts on that. The news round brought to you with thanks to Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. Where are we starting?
Storm Eunice, it could wreak havoc with the opening weekend of the SSE Airtricity League. The Premier Division games at both Finn Harps and Sligo Rovers are subject to pitch inspections on Friday and Saturday morning respectively. Tomorrow's First Division meeting of Bray Wanderers and Cork City also subject to a 10 a.m. inspection.
Yeah, this is not what anybody in the League of Ireland needs on the opening night of the season, where you get a crowd in, you entertain them, and you keep them coming back week after week. And either way, the weather tomorrow doesn't look like it's going to be the most appetizing for getting people out and about, but hopefully people still get to games, and hopefully everything and the storm isn't quite as bad as is predicted. But yeah,
Nathan, will this affect the running of the Nathan Murphy Friday phone-in? That's the big question out there.
Absolutely not. Nothing will stop the running of the Nathan Murphy Friday night phone-in unless my wine bottler opener doesn't work, and I have to, look elsewhere for entertainment of a Friday evening. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Joe, while we're getting the plugs in. So we tried this last Friday night. I mentioned it previously. It is a sort of phone-in type thing. It's on the Off the Ball Twitter page. So if you follow Off the Ball on Twitter, you will see tomorrow night from 10 o'clock that we're talking League of Ireland. Myself, Johnny Ward and Shane Keegan. We're going to be looking back on the opening night, and you can take part as well. So there's a button there. You just press it and say you want to talk, and you can come in and give your opinion like the old-fashioned 5 Live, Premier League Live phone in. Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
Phoning in. I'm phoning in. Long time, first time. I'm coming at you tomorrow.
Brilliant. I look forward to it, Joe.
I'm going to have some thoughts on Duffer's Shelburne on the telly.
Yeah, be the first man to criticise Duffer's Shelburne and see how that goes for you.
Yeah. Duffer, despite all his best efforts, is just going to be box office every week. Full houses at his press conferences. Always just interesting. He can't help it, even though he doesn't want to do it.
I think that's the best part of it, Richie, isn't it? That he doesn't want to be box office, but by not wanting to be, he's becoming even more so.
Yeah, people who've taken that stance and say, I don't want to be box office, I don't want to be a pundit, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, like invariably end up being the exact thing just by dint of their recalcitrance. They end up being that thing. Look at Roy Keane. He never wanted to be a pundit. He is the pundit in the UK at the moment. Similarly, Damien Duff will be the voice of the League of Ireland, whether he wants to be or not. And it'd be great to have him there, because he'd be a fresh pair of eyes and fresh pair of ears on the league, essentially, even though he's worked with Rovers for the past while. To get involved, getting his fingernails dirty in the nitty gritty of things week in and week out is going to be quite something to see.
I do think one of the big differences between a Duff and a Keane is that, as you say, Joe, his press conferences will be packed. He won't entertain conversation around anything that's not Shelburne.
No.
And I think his reluctance at the moment is understandable, because when a Damien Duff, a figure of the profile of Damien Duff, comes in, it's very easy for people in marketing teams and the League of Ireland to get excited and think, we've almost got ourselves a little mascot here. We got somebody we can put out in front as the main selling point for the League of Ireland, and we're going to put him in front of every microphone going, and he's going to sell the league, and people are going to come in because Damien Duff is here. And Duff, rightly, is saying, I'm the manager of Shelburne. Like, I have a job to do here. I need to keep this team in the Premier Division for starters. I take myself seriously. I'm taking this job seriously.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that, and he's entitled to. Do you know what, though? I hope he leans into it a little bit. I hope he understands people will be very interested in him, and he is box office. And to be fair, the interviews he's done this week, did one with Ashley in our show and various others, like, that gets me a bit more excited about Friday. So, look, I don't want it to become a pantomime. I don't think any of us would think it's right if we just go to Damien Duff press conferences to ask him for his opinion on what happened Mourinho last night, or what happened Chelsea this week, or what do you make of the FAI this week. But, him being box office about the league and selling it a touch, no harm. Very interesting, Shelburne's attendance figures across the season. I think there's going to be
it's a sellout tomorrow night.
I'll bet. I bet.
They're
it's
hamstrung
like
a little bit by the stadium. Yeah, they're hamstrung a little bit by Tolka. I can't remember who added up the other day, but there's certain stands are closed off, including the new one over by the so-called new one over above the dressing room. So there is a limit, I think, on how many they can get in. Right. Off the top of my head, it says 4,000 or 5,000. But I think it's in round 4. That should be the upper end of what they can expect to get in for the time being anyway. Hopefully that changes throughout the season.
Yeah, I guess it's a similar situation to Bowes, Richie, that there's the good news story of it's sold out, but actually when you go to the ground, there's large sections of the ground that can't be used.
Yeah, two and a bit sections really of Dalymount can't be used, and like they put a limited number of general sale tickets on sale at Dalymount for the first 2 home games of the season, and like it meant a limited amount, and they're gone. So the first 2 games are sellouts, but then again, you're only going to have the Jody and a bit of the school end that are going to have fans in them, and they need, for Shelburne's sake and for Bow's sake, they need to get that new stadium built sooner rather than later.
If you do want to go to Tolka Park tomorrow night, or you want to go to Tala, we have tickets to give away on the football show for both Shells against Pats and Shamrock Rovers against UCD. So that's coming up after 9 o'clock. Dan McDonnell and Stewie Byrne will be alongside me in studio. Pat Raheny is serving it straight. Phil Mickelson has to be the most self-serving and reprehensible person ever in professional sport, and that's saying something.
He's not even in the top 100, and that is saying something.
He's getting there, though, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he's doing his best. Like he's really like trying to tarnish his legacy at quite a pace,
Because Phil would have been probably the most popular golfer. I know Tiger had obviously the supreme popularity because of his absolute greatness, but there was a warmth towards Phil. Yeah, that is evaporating rapidly.
He was the natural successor to Arnold Palmer. This was kind of his thing, and then the win last year, the major. Although he was starting to fray around the edges even last year in terms of reputation. But there was still such an outpouring. But yeah,
it does just feel maybe it is the money, as you say, selling the private jet. He's lived in San Diego all his life. He's moving to Florida now with the family because tax. He's upset, as it says in the article. Tax may not be the number one thing he thinks about every day, but it's 2, 3, 4, and 5. So he's heading to Florida to live there. He's having the mother and father of midlife crisis. Like the sunglasses, the coffee drinking. What are you doing? Someone just needs to take him aside and say, Phil, you're Phil Mickelson. You don't need all this.
Yeah, there's a real degree of, dude, you're good. Like there's just chill now and just enjoy the next 30, 40 years. I don't know what he's at. Like he's made $100 million in PGA Tour wins alone. It's before we talk about the endorsements, which must be a multiple of that.
What else you got for us, Richie?
Lots of rugby bits going on today. Keith Earls remains a doubt for Ireland's remaining Six Nations games. The winger missed the Wales and France matches with a hamstring injury. And Munster senior coach Stephen Larkham said today that Earls isn't expected back in the short term. Prop Dave Kilcoyne, meanwhile, will make a 200th Munster appearance in tomorrow night's URC meeting with Edinburgh. Craig Casey, Dan Goggin and Calvin Nash also come into the team. While Josh van der Flier signed a new contract at Leinster, his teammates Kieran Frawley and Ed Byrne also put pen to paper on extensions today. And it's believed that South Africa have informed the Southern Hemisphere's governing body that they're exploring the option of joining the Six Nations. South Africa Rugby signed a new deal with Sanzar this week, tethering them to the Rugby Championship until 2025, but they've been involved with Six Nations stakeholders CVC about potentially joining the competition once that deal expires.
Joe, everyone seems to be in agreement that Italy isn't working in the Six Nations, but also have massive reservations about a change like this to the Six Nations, because almost every alteration, and there have been dozens of them in recent years, to the rugby calendar appear to have been a negative.
Yeah.
Have taken something away rather than adding something.
Yeah. It's like the Italy thing, though, is tough, isn't it? 34 straight games, no win. He's going backwards. The first decade they were competitive, and then there was a less good 5 years, and it's just gone to pieces since 2015, which is now more than 5 years, isn't it? So the big issue with the Italy games is there's even not a hint of jeopardy. Even if we could just get back to a stage where there was an Italy win every 3 years, just that sense, it's possible. But at the moment, it doesn't feel like it's possible. I've misgivings about South African rugby for a whole bunch of reasons. And the great thing about the Six Nations is no one dominates. South Africa could... They could start dominating, They could really be very, very, difficult winning it. You could see them winning 3 years out of 5 nearly. But that aside, look, there is a part of you when you take last weekend. The Scotland-Wales game was amazing in its own kind of way. It was tight and tense and all that. The France-Ireland game was an epic. Can you imagine if the next day it was England versus South Africa? I mean, because at the moment the Six Nations is 2 games and the Italian game. That's a weekend. And we're okay with that, but you throw South Africa in and there's literally never a bad game. So I don't know, like 2025, that's when the next TV rights deal is up. It feels like it's coming. Like it does feel like it's coming. How much longer do you give the Italians, or is it fine? Do you just keep? Do you mind it just keep going on like this? Is it part of the tradition? Someone hockey's Italy, it's fine.
Yeah, there's no real right answer to this unless you go back to a 5 nations, and the one thing that is most certainly not going to happen in rugby is have less games. No,
the gap week is terrible. No one wants to go back to the gap week. Ireland, if that was the case now, Ireland wouldn't have a game in 4 weeks. So I don't know. Would you want South Africa in?
I just haven't seen any improvement from their involvement in any of the competitions so far. And that this is a different beast because you're getting the very best of the best. But even the logistics of it, I know it's the same time zone, but can you have to work the calendar there so that maybe you have a week off before you go to South Africa, so there's the travel time, coming up, do they play the games back to back? It changes all the history, the tradition, but obviously CBC have made a massive investment in rugby, and the way of constantly increasing the value of the TV rights is by adding a little bit of stardust, and South Africa can do just that. So maybe money will talk and it'll happen. It's obviously a couple of years away anyways. Richie, just on the football tonight, quite a game in Dortmund.
Yeah, there's a couple of decent games already underway or into the final few minutes. But as you mentioned there, it's now Borussia Dortmund 2, Rangers 4. Alfredo Morelos has scored twice for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's side. Rafael Guerrero has struck in the past couple of minutes to reduce the deficit to 2. No Erling Haaland for Dortmund tonight. He has a muscle injury that's keeping him out for the next couple of weeks, but that would be quite the result for the Scottish champions. Elsewhere, it's Barcelona 1, Napoli 1. A Ferran Torres penalty for Barca, cancelling out Piotr Zielinski's early goal for Napoli. Betis are 3-2 up, 0-8-2 Zenit St. Petersburg, and Sheriff Tiraspol are 1-0 up at home to Braga. There's action, of course, in the Conference League tonight. Liam Scales and James McCarthy both on the bench for Celtic as they entertain one of the competition's surprise packages this year. Bodo Glimt have already caused headaches for Jose Mourinho and Roma, while Leicester, they entertain the Danes of Randers, and both of those games are underway at 8 o'clock.
All right, Richie, great stuff as always.
Nice one.
Joe, enjoy the weekend.
Likewise, cheers, fellas.
So, football show coming up after 9. We'll be talking to Dan McDonald and Stewie Byrne ahead of the start of the League of Ireland season. We've Ursula Jacob ahead of the Camogie semi-finals after 8 o'clock, and also Sonny Bill Williams, feature interview coming with him after 8 as well. John Giles is up next.